BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all of your sports betting action. With baseball season in full swing, BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are still being played. We keep the dog days of summer rolling with the largest selection of odds on everything, with updated odds on Major League Baseball, UFC, and boxing, to tennis, and NFL futures. BetOnline remains the best online source for all of your sports wagering information. In between games, just head on over to the BetOnline casino with all of the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Bleav in Bengals. Yours truly, Solomon Wilcots. And we're joined by a very special guest, James Rapien, the publisher of Bengals on Sports Illustrated. James, welcome to the show. How you doing this week, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. How are you?
And look, we have lots to discuss. I am doing great, by the way. I don't know if you've been enjoying the Netflix series Quarterback in its second season, but they have a very special and I think intriguing sort of subject in one Joe Burrow. Because as you well know, Joe's a very private individual, but he lets Peyton Manning and Omaha Productions in a little bit. And therefore, I think even those of us who have been around Joe, have watched his whole career in Cincinnati, I get the sense we're learning maybe just a few more things about him. What are you learning from watching this episode?
I think the biggest takeaway from the series is you can kind of see why Joe is Joe, why he's one of the, at worst, 4 best quarterbacks on the planet. I would probably have him a little higher than that, but we're not here to debate that.
Yeah.
But when you compare him to Jared Goff and Kirk Cousins, and I get it, Kirk Cousins is towards the latter part of his career, but I think you see how unique he is in his approach and the way he is very calm and composed. The way he trains, how he takes all of these hits, and then he's in the Bengals training facility like, I feel better than I thought I would. Well, yeah, it's just he's a very unique individual, and whether it was his upbringing, whether it was the college situation and everything that went into that before he became a star at LSU, you can kind of see all the little things that help make Joe Joe, which is one of the best quarterbacks on the planet.
Yeah, I want to peel back a few of the layers to reveal, I think, some very intricate details about who he is. Because I do think Peyton Manning, whose production company shot the piece, I think what Peyton is looking to do is kind of tell people what it really is like and how difficult it is to be an NFL quarterback, right? And I think he's revealing how hard it is physically, how hard it is mentally. You see Jared Goff with his wife going through this rote memory of plays that are, I mean, it's almost like learning a Shakespearean script, so to speak, right? But also the psychological issues that come with it. You have this ether, this ecosystem of media that is constantly, Joe Burrow is injury prone, Joe Burrow's this, and whether it's true, whether it's not, perception is reality. He even mentions that, yeah, we hear it. He said, we hear it. But the ability to me to block all of those things out, all of the distractions, and still deliver. And he talked about the energy as you get closer to the season, kind of building and what's required for it to be sustainable, right, through a 17-game regular season schedule. I do think this Netflix, the second season, I think the whole series kind of shows you just how hard it is. And I think he manages it, providing the ability to stay healthy, which is really out of all of our control as a player, right? I think those other elements, the psychological, the mental, and the physical, I think he handles it as well as anyone I've ever seen.
Well, you get a firsthand look at what was the best and probably the worst, in a way, season of his career. Worst because they didn't have the success that he certainly wanted to have and was playing like they should have. If you would have told me a year ago that he was going to lead the league in passing yards, completions, and passing touchdowns, I would have said, well, yeah, they probably win the division. And instead they get swept by Baltimore. They lose to Pittsburgh to fall to 4-8 to start December. and you go through that again. And I think that's what fans were a little worried about when they saw that Joe was on quarterback, is having to relive it.
Yeah.
But to your point, I think you also see how strong he is physically, mentally, all of the ups and mostly downs, especially in the first 3 months of the season that he went through. And then they finally have a big win. They get a break on the road in Dallas prime time. And Joe has to go through the robbery situation. I think you see all of the ups, downs, emotion, the physical battles, all of those things that come with playing quarterback, to your point. And in Joe's case, that come with playing quarterback at the level that he plays it at, because he's at a very unique level. And I think the Bengals put more on his plate than any other quarterback in the league. And that's how he wants it. So to be able to see that, I think, was really intriguing.
And as we continue to peel back the layers, some of the intricate things that we saw in this piece, I'm going to point to what we call a couple of moments. It's almost like if we were in offering up evidence, it would be exhibit A and B, where Zach Taylor says there's not another quarterback in this league. He said not another player in this league he would want on his team ahead of Joe Burrow. I concur. I tend to agree. But I think even from maybe another source, Kansas City Chiefs defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo, after the game, came over to Joe and said, hey, look, other than our guy, and you got the sense he was, if Patrick Mahomes were to see this, I could not say that I would want you over Pat Mahomes. But he said, look, other than our guy, there's not another player I would want more than you. This is coming from Steve Spagnuolo. He's won more Super Bowls than any other defensive coordinator in NFL history. I think that speaks to the leadership, to the mentality, to the toughness that we see from Joe Burrow, that truly, I think, draws admiration from players and coaches league-wide, James.
No doubt. It's the whole ecosystem revolves around him and is dependent on him. That doesn't mean it always puts him in the best spot or situation.
That's right.
You think about the Chiefs game. He's coming off of that Patriots loss, and he's talking to the quarterbacks, and he's like, early in the season, sometimes I just hold on to the ball thinking we're going to win, and I don't force it because I don't want to turn it over. Yeah. And maybe that's part of the early season stuff. It was also him coming off of the wrist, but then he goes to Kansas City and plays at a really high level, and it's still not enough. Yeah. But that was kind of foreshadowing what he was going to do. And I agree. I think that it would be hard for me to take any quarterback, including Patrick Mahomes. And I know the rest.
I agree. Yeah.
over Joe. And maybe we're just closer to it, but I don't think that's it. I think I could separate it. I think that it really is because of everything he's asked to do. Now, the Bengals are able to do a little bit more, then maybe we're talking about them back in the playoffs. But yeah, I think he's really well respected, and any conversation about the Bengals begins and ends with Joe Burrow.
He was one game away. Let's face it, the Bengals in the playoffs. Joe Burrow's your league MVP in 2024. I don't think it's even close, by the way. And the only player that would have been close, I think, would have been Saquon Barkley because of the season he had. But Joe Burrow performed. It's about as good as one can possibly play at the quarterback position, and a team still not make it into the postseason. I want to bring up one more point that I think makes him uniquely special, that at least we were able to learn a little bit more about him. I think being the son of a coach and the relationship that he has with his dad, but I think uniquely the relationship he has with his mom, who was so supportive during those lean years at Ohio State, right? Where she made the trip from Athens to Columbus every single week, and he never played in a single game for 3 seasons. And then the final 2 seasons at LSU, we now know what happened. But this is a guy who was born to do this. And you can see in his relationship that he has with JaMarr Chase, and the families, their relationships are uniquely special. It's something about Joe Burrow and all the guys from his hometown, his high school team that he remains close with, that he brings to the game and put them up in a suite. That relationships are something that's so very important to him.
No doubt. I think Joe finding a way, even though he's, I would say, the second biggest star behind Patrick Mahomes in the NFL from a straight star standpoint.
Yeah.
Staying true to his roots. He always sees his parents, always chats with they work with his foundation, all of those things. Yeah. And a lot of those lessons, you're right, helped him get through the hard times, all the fun times at Athens when he was taking them to the state championship. Right. And then he gets to Ohio State and he's thinking he's going to be the next Buckeye star, and it didn't work out.
Yeah.
But when you have that support, then you can navigate that and go to LSU and suddenly you're ready to hit the ground running. And you have that guy in JaMarr Chase who had a heck of a support system as well, and one of the best teams ever at LSU. I do think it's unique, though, because I did know this about Joe. He tries to play video games with his high school friends that go way back weekly during the season. Maybe it's a Monday, maybe it's a Tuesday, but you saw it in the suite, bringing former coaches and friends. And he doesn't want to lose sight of that, of what and who helped him get to this point.
Yeah.
And I think that's really tough to do when you're much lower on the totem pole from an NFL standpoint or a success standpoint than Joe. Yeah. So for him to do that, I think it's really telling to who he wants to be and who he's trying to be as he navigates this superstardom life on and off the field.
James, I think I could speak for a lot of NFL players and former players and all of us. I think even for guys who never played in the NFL, if you played high school football, and if you played in an area where the entire town rallied around the team and you did well, you played and went to a state championship game, whether you won it or not, but to go through those moments, to have those, what we call Friday night lights experiences, there's movies made of this stuff, right? I think it's something that's so inherent to who we are as a people in our country, as young men who played together as high school kids, and then you grow up, you become men, right? Kenny Chesney made songs about this, right? And it's really powerful that those are relationships you never want to let go, because it's the most fun you'll ever have playing the game. Not that you don't have that fun in college or in the NFL, but it does become a business. It becomes a labor as well as something that you love. But you always look back to those high school days, as you probably yourself know, as some of the fondest moments that you'll ever have and will ever remember about the game.
Well, when you see teammates that you haven't seen in a long time, it's you dap them up and you chat with them, and it's just like you're catching up really quickly. So yeah, those are bonds that are just there. Yeah, and they don't go away. And yeah, you may lose touch. I mean, I'm bad at it. I'm bad at keeping in touch with former team. But when you see them or you run into them, or maybe you chat on social media briefly, and it's boom, you're right back to it. So yeah, I think I agree with you. I think that's something that sticks with you. And so for Joe, I mean, I think back during COVID, he was throwing with his high school teammates as a professional. He had just won the Heisman Trophy.
That's right.
He's in his parents' house, and he's throwing to his high school teammates to get ready for Bengals training camp. It's just, that's who he is. And I do think that you saw on quarterback that started with his parents and the foundation that they put in place.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of trust there that Peyton Manning and his production company would do a really good job of taking care of, Joe's very private. I think we learned a lot about, to see that his home was broken into in the way that it was. It was just really heartfelt for many of us who live in the same community. If you live anywhere in the Cincinnati area, your heart had to go out to him at that very moment. I want to transition to talking about Shemar Stewart, because as you and I sit here and record this interview, it's now being reported that he's back on campus at College Station at Texas A&M, where he went to school and played 3 seasons there. A lot of people think that he could choose the nuclear option and try to go back and play another season at Texas A&M and re-enter the 2026 draft. I don't know that he'll go that far, but he is back on campus working out. I think it's a good thing that he's working out and he has a familiar place to work out. I think for most people, the antenna and the eyebrows go up to hear that he's back on campus working out at Texas A&M. Your thoughts once you heard the news break?
Boy, oh boy, that better be where it ends. It better be where it ends.
That's right. That's right.
He's working out. Yeah, I'm all about Shemar Stewart staying in shape. You want to work out at a familiar place? Makes a ton of sense to me.
Yeah.
But that would be, you're right. The nuclear option is a good way to describe it because no one wins. And that's what would be the case if Shemar went that route. We'll find out. Bengals rookies are scheduled to report on July 19th. So we'll find out soon enough if he wants to go that route. It's worth noting last year, Amarius Mims reported for training camp, but didn't participate until he signed his deal. I Bleav it was on July 21st. So they have a few days after he reports, but if he does report. But yeah, I seriously hope for both sides that we're not talking about Shemar considering sitting out or holding out. I thought the holdout days for rookies was over, Solomon. I don't want to start covering that now.
I've been there. I've watched it, and I can tell you right now, that's what we call mutually assured destruction. It does no one any good. It's you and I both know it's not good for the player. No. It won't be in this case. It won't be good for the team. If it was a draft pick where the team was covered at that position, had other players that could produce at that position, but this is a player that is needed now. Okay. And I don't mean needed by game one. I mean needed now, first day of practice in Al Golden's defense. I think there's this belief that there's this plug and play quotient to these human beings that play in the National Football League. They're every single player, from Joe Burrow to Peyton Manning. I don't care if you were the first overall selection. There's an adjustment period. There are things that you need to learn coming in this game. College football is not NFL football. It just isn't. We play football in a lot of places, whether it's in Canada, whether it's in college, whether it's arenas. It's not NFL football. There are things that need to be learned. There are adjustments that need to be made. There is a growth factor that plays out here. And coaches and players are going to speak very benign about it as we lead up to it because no one wants to overreact. No one wants to hyperventilate, right, when the player's not on the field. But I'm telling you, there's a true concern when the work's not getting done. There's a reason why we call it time on task, right? There's a reason why, Malcolm Gladwell says we need 10,000 hours to be good at what we do. You don't get better sitting on the sofa. You don't get better practicing on the field against air. You get better by doing the work that's required that allows you to improve. So I think it's equally important for the player, in this case, Shemar Stewart, to be on the practice field day one when they begin working. But I think it's also equally important for the team and for team morale, for the Bengals specifically, to have Shemar Stewart on the practice field day one. There cannot be one rep loss because he's already missed some important work, I think, during OTAs.
Yeah, that's it. Is during OTAs, I was like, I can't believe this doesn't feel bigger. He needs those reps and they need him. I remember on draft night, everyone talked about how 4.5 sacks and he's a project and he needs to learn. One, if that's the case, the way you learn is by playing. Two, I think he could start. Like, I think he's capable of starting because he's so physically gifted.
Yes, he is.
And if you can refine that just a little bit, you may say, all right, well, let's roll with him right now. And he hasn't gotten any on-field work. The only thing he did during the Bengals offseason program is line up in the running back spot. Jerry Montgomery put him there as the pass rushers were working and just literally standing there next to the coach. And that really hurts the player. But to your point, it hurts the team that is supposed to be in win now mode, is supposed to be in not only get back to the playoffs mode, but win a Super Bowl. It's hard for me to see that scenario where you're essentially shelving a first round pick. You need him on the field. You need to get him in sync with this defense and figure out how beneficial and how helpful he's going to be for that week one matchup against Cleveland.
We're talking about lost days of productivity. And in any industry, it's an issue. It's an issue when you're not working at an optimally efficient level with your employees. I think it is indicative of what we've seen over the last several years now, where we've had this consistency year over year since the Bengals played in that Super Bowl in 2021. Every single offseason has been plagued with these talks of contracts, whether it's Jessie Bates, whether it's T. Higgins, whether it's JaMarr Chase, or whether it's now Trey Hendrickson. And I do Bleav the team has to begin now to take it more seriously. We're now reading articles, in fact, where the faith that the fans have in the front office is, quote, dwindling. This is not a Solomon Wilcots quote. These are the articles that we're reading now. You live in the city. You're in coffee houses and in pubs. You know these are the conversations among the Bengals fan base. And top of mind is, will we waste the career of a talented quarterback like Joe Burrow? And if, year after year, you're going to be having these conversations and not having the players on the field for practice, I think it's a legitimate concern. What say you, James Rapien?
100%. I think that's what's most disappointing about this offseason is it felt like, and I'm not really surprised that the Trey thing has kind of gone this route. I was surprised that they gave him permission to seek a trade, but it feels like they're rolling the dice at multiple spots, rolling the dice at guard.
Yes.
They haven't had any big additions on defense outside of, if you include Shemar Stewart and Demetrius Knight Jr., which are draft picks, and you don't know how rookies are going to respond to life in the NFL. It's just, it's really tough to envision them completely turning things around in those two areas, on the defense completely, and then at guard. And I think fans look at that and they say, well, this is what always happens. You take a few steps forward, but you don't go the extra mile.
That's right.
And in the Joe Burrow era, you should go the extra mile. They have cap space. They could have addressed more than just bringing back JaMarr, T, and Mike. They could have had bigger splashes. Doesn't mean they need to be flashy. A lot of people are worried about the trenches. Trenches aren't flashy, but they have unproven pieces there that they're relying on. And so I totally get it. And I do wonder if a few months from now, if we're going to say, man, they should have added another guard, or they should have added another pass rusher, they should have done this. I've
already been saying it. When you think you're close to winning a Super Bowl, if you think you're good, double down.
Yes.
Go do more. Go do more.
Yes. Yep.
Because let's take the 2021 Rams, who beat the Bengals in the Super Bowl, by the way. Let's just take that offseason heading into 2021. You know what they did? They went out and they were aggressive, and they swapped quarterbacks with the Detroit Lions. They went and got Matthew Stafford for Jared Goff, a quarterback who had already taken them to the Super Bowl. But they weren't going to trade even. They said, no, we got to get better. That same offseason, they went and got a Von Miller, right? After the season started, they went out and then they got Odell Beckham Jr. They went out and got Jalen Ramsey. They were still adding pieces even after the season started. And then everyone had wrongly predicted, James, that, the salary cap is going to get them. They've given up all these draft picks. They're going to be in purgatory. All they've done is went to the playoffs 2 of the last 3 years, right? And we have not gone to the playoffs in 2 of the last 3 years. All I'm doing is just by comparison, just weighing what it looks like when you're really trying to go win it all.
No doubt. And it's bitten the Bengals. I mean, guard is something that you could say Joe Burrow gets hurt his first year. How? Michael Jordan gets ran over and at guard, and that happens. The next year, guard play is what really impacted them and cost them in the Super Bowl. The year after that, they have 3 offensive linemen go down, and they're playing with one hand tied behind their back against Kansas City and are 1 or 2 plays away from going to back-to-back Super Bowls. Guard play has impacted them, and they've never really prioritized it historically, going long before the Joe Burrow era. I mean, we could go way back if we wanted to. And I do wonder why they don't see that. And I think it's unfair to say, all right, well, Dylan Fairchild's just going to come in as a 3rd-round rookie and be an above-average NFL starter. Like, I'm hoping for league average play. On the other side, you have a couple veterans battling there. It's just, it's obvious to me that that's going to be a concerning spot. And maybe not. Maybe things work out there, or maybe things work out on defense. But for it to all come together and work out where you're not like, they should have added this guy, I find it hard to Bleav, because to your point, in the Joe Burrow window, you should always be putting the pedal to the metal, because any singular game, even if he doesn't have the more talented team, you have a real shot to win that game. And so why not give him as much talent as you can?
After last year of watching the Philadelphia Eagles and Howie Roseman, the work that he's done to help his team get better, to double down in areas where they were already good, I'm starting to see where front offices in today's NFL have a tremendous impact on your ability to win championships year over year. And here we are another year. And I want to ask this question before we say goodbye. How big and how important is it that the front office does the Bengals and Al Golden, their new defensive coordinator, a huge service by making sure that when the Bengals report to training camp by the end of next week, that he has Trey Hendrickson, he has Shemar Stewart, and he has Demetrius Knight. Because right now, only one of those guys have a contract. The two rookies don't have a contract. And Trey Hendrickson says he's not playing under this contract.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. And of the three, I think the second round picks are pretty unique because it's an NFL wide situation.
That's right. That's right.
You hope Demetrius Knight shows up but he can't practice without a contract.
Can't practice without a contract. That's right.
That's super unique. But the Trey situation, they can handle. Trey wants a contract. Trey wants to be in Cincinnati. Trey wants to be on the field. I know that for a fact. Yeah. And so I would offer him a 2-year extension. You give him more money this year. You get him in the $30+ million range for the next couple of seasons. And I think he would take that and love life in Cincinnati and feel really good about his situation. For Shemar, yeah, you got to try to get him on the field. Like I just, those are the two that they control. And whether it's sweetening Shamar's deal to keep the contract stuff the way you want it, or in Trey's case, giving him a better offer, a multi-year offer, they should get it done. And I'll say this with the Trey stuff, keep an eye out. Joe Burrow is pretty tame this offseason when it came to Trey Hendrickson after JaMarr and T got done. If this Trey thing goes into August and we're getting into preseason games, wouldn't shock me if Joe Burrow speaks out, because he knows they need Trey Hendrickson if they're going to win a Super Bowl.
And look, James, you do such a good job reporting on the Cincinnati Bengals, and your coverage is phenomenal. We got to help people to understand that 30 in today's NFL is the new 27. Players don't practice twice a day anymore. Yeah, they play one more game each year, but the way that a player like Trey Hendrickson, a lot of players, they spend and invest so much in their bodies when it comes to massage therapy, when it comes to nutrition, and they're not going through 2-a-day practices. This is not your uncle's NFL. That's not even the NFL I played in, okay? Just because a player's 30 years old does not make him an old man anymore. So we cannot allow that narrative to become so pervasive that that you're allowed to operate as if it were true. I think we found out with even a really good player like Andrew Whitworth, we were premature, right? And predicting his demise because of his age number. Don't allow that narrative to take hold, okay? You got to help me out with this one.
No doubt. And the thing is, let's just say it didn't work. Let's say they paid Trey and it didn't work. No one's going to blame him. No one's going to say, oh my gosh, we can't believe when Joe Burrow is in his prime.
Why did you do that?
Why would you pay the NFL sack leader that had 35 sacks combined over the past 2 years and was second in defensive player of the year and was your only source of pass rush? Like, no one's going to say that. They're going to blame you if you worry about that and you question it. By the way, you mentioned Andrew Whitworth. Give him a couple protein shakes and see if he can play guard for the Bengals, because he might be able to start today.
He's in great shape, by the way. He's in great shape. He's always been in great shape. James, hey, it's always good to have you on. You're the best. We'll see you around Cincinnati Bengals training camp. The best of luck to you coming up this season. We want to thank everyone for joining us for yet another edition of the Bleav in Bengal podcast. Thank you for joining us, everyone.